The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local journalism today at chly.ca/donate. Local news doesn't survive without local support.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. The BC Green Party is getting set to choose a new leader. 3 candidates are in the race to replace Sonia Furstenau. Voting will happen in September. To be eligible to vote in the contest, a person needs to be a member of the party ahead of a deadline this Sunday. Today on the program, we'll bring you conversations with each of the 3 people vying to be the next leader of the BC Green Party. Emily Lowen's campaign bio describes her as a renter, organizer, and advocate for climate justice and Indigenous solidarity. She's from Victoria and has experience working with the Climate Action Network and the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Emily Lowen, what is your pitch for why you should be the new leader of the BC Greens?
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me on the show. So here in BC, a third of us are struggling to pay for groceries. Everyone I talk to is worried about the future. We've had 8 years under the same government and all our major problems have gotten worse. I think it's time for new ideas and new energy in BC politics. That's what I'm bringing to this campaign and it's working. I think more than ever, we need bold vision and immediate action. We need people-powered resistance to confront billionaires, corporate greed, and government complacency. I've been a community, provincial, and national organizer for a decade. I've led bold coalitions across climate, labor, and Indigenous nations. And I think what this party needs is not another politician, but a true organizer to bring the base back to life and to bring new people into the party. Because we need the Greens to step up and be a bold force and a thorn in the side of the governing party, to be an unignorable beacon of real solutions that represent climate, social movements, and regular people across this province. So I'm committed to building the Green Party into a force for changing the status quo in favor of working people. And I think it's time for a new generation of leadership with the fire to truly fight for British Columbians.
What are some of the things you'd be hoping to do? Like, what is the direction you'd want to take the party in differently? What would be your policy priorities? What would you hope to accomplish specifically?
So my campaign is called Fight the Oligarchs, Fund Our Future. And what I'm saying there is that we'll never be able to fix what's broken so long as a small handful of men take more and more of the pie every year. That's why we're building a people-powered movement to force our government to directly confront corporate interests, so we're actually able to invest in a future that works for everyone. So with that, I think it's important to acknowledge that extreme wealth isn't created out of nowhere. It has to be extracted from the land or stolen from other people. The oligarchs and richest corporations in this province have looted our public coffers and destroyed land from Indigenous nations. I think we need to stop the billionaire wealth hoarding to have the things that we need and deserve. So in my platform, I talk about taxing BC's richest corporations in the 1%, with measures like a windfall tax, property tax, and others, so we can fund 26,000 units of non-market housing, truly affordable housing per year, free public transit and public healthcare reinvestment. I also want a massively expanded green jobs program. So anyone under the age of 35 can have a good green job, contributing back to their community.
In both the most recent federal and provincial elections, there was a trend towards 2 parties getting the majority of the votes in most of the places, at least to a far higher degree than other recent elections. How would you convince voters that the Green Party is a viable option to win a seat in their riding?
Yeah, I think a strong democracy represents the voices of people within it. And that is certainly not the case with the first past the post electoral system. We desperately need proportional representation. And I think the Greens would hold a really strong position in a minority government setting with holding the balance of power and holding the governing party to account with a negotiated agreement. And I think with a influx of a new base of people to the Green Party would actually have the leverage to do that and to negotiate more bold policy. I think I'm focused on growing the number of people who vote, not fighting over a shrinking pie. My campaign is about bringing people in who've never seen their priorities reflected in BC politics. And I think that's how we win here in this leadership race, and that's how we strengthen our democracy. I'm very aware of what I believe is the greater evil among our parties, and I'm not interested in ushering in a far-right BC Conservative premier to victory, and our election strategy should reflect that.
You were 24 years old when you enter this race. How do you think that factors into things?
Well, Joe, I will be 25 when I win this race, and my prefrontal cortex will be completely developed by then. So it's I think growing up facing the climate crisis, the affordability crisis, the toxic drugs crisis, I have always seen them for what they are, which is a rigged, ruthless battle for power between billionaires, their vested political interests, and the rest of us just trying to get by. So I think grappling with the reality of our world from such an early age forced me to get really serious about who I am and what I can contribute. And over the last decade, I have led a nonprofit, worked on political and issue-based campaigns. I've worked at Climate Action Network Canada for several years, most recently, where I led coalitions of the largest national organizations, coalitions of climate, labor, and Indigenous nations. I've worked as a researcher directly to Indigenous chiefs on environmental assessments, co-authored reports. And I think it's taught me so much about what it means to truly build and supercharge a diverse movement of people. And I hope to do that with the BC Greens.
And the party has made membership free for people under 30. How are you approaching the task of getting new members signed up in this leadership race?
Yeah, I think step one is tell people the truth. And it turns out people are ready to hear it. More than 300,000 people have watched my first videos, and we've got more content coming. I think step two is show people that democracy can actually be empowering and fun. And so we're doing that with in-person events and a whole lot of conversations with our friends and our neighbors. And step three is to get people to sign up to be a member of the BC Greens. So you can vote for the person that you want holding the government's feet to the fire. And as you said, it's completely free for anyone age 14 to 29. It just takes a minute to sign up, and you can do it on my website at emilyforbcgreens.ca. We have brought in a wave of new membership and energy by tackling head-on the issues that are affecting British Columbians the most. We're fed up with oligarchy looting our public coffers for mega pipelines and driving up prices on food and housing while our government stands idly by. I think people are really hungry for a party that fights back. And I am really excited by the momentum that we've built. We have an incredible list of endorsements that we've built over the last couple of weeks. Dr. Gabor Mate, who is the best-selling author of The Myth of Normal and a world-renowned expert on trauma and addictions, has endorsed us. And Zipporah Berman, who is also a really acclaimed environmental activist. David Suzuki's daughter, Severin Cullis Suzuki, has endorsed as well. Many city councillors, including Sean Orr, Dr. Jeremy Caradonna, and an incredible amount of Indigenous leadership across northern BC, from hereditary chief of the Wet'suwet'en, Chief Namox, Jesse Stockler, and many others. So yeah, it's been incredible to see the surge and the diversity of voices that are coming around my campaign, and I think it can only grow from here.
If you win the leadership, how would you plan to operate as the leader of a party without a seat in Victoria?
I actually think it's an incredible advantage. It will allow me the capacity to set up a real leader's office where we can tour the province and start really diving deep and building these coalitions and having the conversations that we need across the province to be ready for the next election. So I feel very lucky to have the support of two incredible MLAs, Jeremy Valeriot and Rob Botterill, who are, holding down the fort in the legislature. And I think it would be a massive advantage to have myself, a movement builder and an organizer, really, bringing the province together and having my full time dedicated towards election preparedness.
Do you think you would plan to enter any by-elections that came up between now and 2028?
Yeah, I'm absolutely open to a by-election. And I think that's a conversation we'd have with the party and to strategize about. And I'd definitely run in the next general election for a seat.
What do you think the party should be looking to achieve from its cooperation and responsible government accord with the NDP over each of the next years that come before the 2028 provincial election?
Yeah, I would love to see more focus on proportional representation, and I understand that's happening through the Committee on Democratic Reform. But I think in future agreements, having really clear terms on proportional representation and maybe not pursuing the disastrous referendum route again, I think would be an important focus. And as I've said in my platform, we need to get serious about the amount of wealth inequality in this province between BC's richest corporations and the 1%. And so we would be using our power that we've built as a movement and as a party to force BC's hand, to force the BC NDP's hand on real wealth distribution, on people like Jim Pattison, Chip Wilson, and the many other companies that are hoarding wealth in BC.
Emily Lowen, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for taking that time to speak with me today.
Thank you so much, Joe. And remember, folks, you can sign up to be a BC Green member until August 10th. That's just a couple days away. And you can check out my website and platform at emilyforbcgreens.ca. Thanks so much for having me.
Emily Lowen is running to be leader of the BC Green Party.
Midcoast Morning is part of our nonprofit newsroom project, supported by listeners like you. Keep this program on the air by funding it today with a monthly sustaining donation at chly.ca/donate. We've got tote bags and shirts if you need an incentive.
We're speaking with candidates in the leadership race for the BC Green Party on today's program. Jonathan Kerr is a family doctor, twice elected Comox councillor, and vice chair of the Comox Valley Regional District. Jonathan Kerr, what is your pitch for why people should choose you to be the next leader of BC's Green Party?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on this morning, Joe. Yeah, really excited about the future of the BC Greens. I'm a family doctor up in Comox, and also a two-term Green councillor here and vice chair of the regional district. And it's been great to see what we can get done when we're elected. And I was elected and brought in some new family doctors. We've recruited 45 new family doctors here in the Comox Valley in the last 3 years. I've been championing a housing authority and, of course, defending our forests and wetlands. And, people in Comox, they've seen what we can do when we elect Greens. And I'm hoping to take that message across the province and grow our party, win more seats, and implement more green policies in the legislature.
What would your policy priorities be if you were leader of the Green Party?
The BC Greens, well, we will always be the home to anyone that cares about the environment or concerns about climate change. That's why I released the environment and climate platform plank first. And I invite anyone to go and read my platform, jonathankerr4bc.com. But I've also released, other elements because in order to grow our base, to have a big tent, bring in as many green supporters as possible, we have to win on the environment and all of the other issues, such as the economy, energy, jobs, cost of living, housing, and healthcare. And so you'll see all of that in my platform, and really excited to share that with voters when that time comes.
You talked about winning voters on other issues in both the most recent federal election, the most recent provincial election. There was a trend towards two parties getting the majority of the votes, more so than in other recent elections around here. How would you convince voters that the Green Party is a viable option for them? It's someone they can vote for who has a chance of winning a seat in their riding.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, I think what we saw is these threats of the Trump tariff threats really polarize the electorate. But what we're seeing here in BC is that the other parties, the BC Greens and now the BC NDP and of course the Conservatives, who are in a bit of a state of disarray as they're splintering into multiple parties. We've seen broken promises. We've seen the NDP, really turn its back on its own environmental regulations, approving new LNG projects and pipelines. And we see the Conservatives, supporting these projects as well. And what I think BC voters are going to see is that, these failed parties aren't ready to lead anymore. And the BC Greens are the ones that deserve a chance to lead our province into the next decade.
What would you be hoping to get out of the agreement your party has with the NDP between now and the next election?
Yeah, the next leader of our party is going to have a real big opportunity to sit down across from the premier and cabinet ministers and negotiate that next year of CARGA, or the cooperation agreement between the Greens and the NDP. And really top of mind on my list is proportional representation or some kind of democratic reform. Our Green MLA, Rob Botterill, he's sitting on this committee, and they're going across the province and listening to citizens. An overwhelming number of people in BC want some kind of a change in our electoral system. And really that will have a huge impact where every vote will count. And we know anywhere in the world that they have a system like this, they have better government, better policies, more cooperation between elected officials, more civil discourse inside the legislature. And that's really what we need. And that would be the top priority for me in the next negotiation.
What do you see as a pathway to that happening, keeping in mind previous referendums that we've seen in the 21st century on this?
Advocate for democratic reform. And the point that he's made is that anywhere in the world that's, brought in a system of proportional representation, they haven't needed a referendum. The legislature just votes for it and then they do it. Some places like New Zealand, they'll, run it for a couple cycles and then have a referendum afterwards. And of course, the electorate is much, much more happy with the system than first past the post. So that's what we could do here, right? Greens and NDP could vote it into law, and then it would just happen. And I think our population would be much better served. And quite frankly, democracy would be better served. Whether you're a Green in the north or the interior, or you're a conservative that lives in Victoria, your vote hasn't counted under this first past the post. We need to have every vote count in our province. And we need, a Green MLA up in the north, and we need a conservative MLA in Victoria, so everyone feels represented and they have someone local that can bring their voice to the legislature.
We're coming up near the deadline for new members to join the Green Party ahead of this leadership race. How has it been for you trying to recruit people, trying to bring people into the party for the leadership race?
It's been so much fun. We've had such a great response. I've been traveling across the province. I was up in Prince George, Quesnel, Williams Lake recently. Today I'm in Kelowna. Yesterday I was in Powell River and Gibsons, and tomorrow I'm going to be in Nelson and Caslow, and really traveling the province, meeting with Greens and Green curious people who are wondering, what can the Greens offer them? When we talk to people about, we're going to have the best plan for the economy, for housing, for healthcare, in addition to the environmental protections that they expect from us, that's really exciting people. And we've seen a lot of people sign up, new members all across the province. And it's just been really encouraging.
Are there any significant changes you'd push for in the party's direction?
Yeah, I think, the days of being a protest party or just a protest party are kind of over. Like, we're a mature party now. The BC Greens have decades of experience. Whether, you look at the cooperation agreements that the Greens have had with government over the recent years, it's been amazing to see how much has gotten done. Like, the current agreement where, more community health centers, protections for renters, this new committee on democratic reform, all of that is because of Green MLAs at the table. And really what I would like to see is us keep focusing on these issues that matter most to people: cost of living, healthcare, housing, in addition to the environment. And that's going to really bring in more momentum for our party. We're going to elect more Green MLAs. We're going to hold the balance of power in the next legislature. And then we can enact even more great policies for the people of British Columbia.
If you win this leadership race, what would your plans be as far as operating as leader of the party without a seat in Victoria?
I'm really excited about having the opportunity to go around the province. I love traveling this province and visiting people in communities and building the riding associations up, and really strengthening them, recruiting great candidates. In Comox, I ran as a Green and got elected, right, to town council. And then in the next election, I helped recruit another candidate, helped her get elected as well. And that's something I'm really passionate about, is finding great candidates who share the 6 Green core values and helping them get elected, building the riding associations, and being really ready. The Greens, we always have the best candidates and we have an amazing platform. What we need to do is really operationalize the ground game and make sure we actually win more seats in the next election. And that would be my focus. And it'd be great that I wouldn't have to be stuck in Victoria for the next couple of years. I could actually get on the road and do this.
That being said, would you be planning to enter any potential by-elections that might come up between now and 2028?
Yeah, Joe, good question. I'm a bit of a data nerd, so I would definitely analyze that up, down, and sideways. If a by-election were to pop up, definitely have a look and see, is it better for me to be on the road, meeting people and growing the party, or better to run in a by-election? I'd have to, cross that bridge when I got there. If it was a couple of years out and we already had that, great ground game in place and lots of candidates and campaign teams ready to go, then yeah, it would make a lot of sense. So it's just going to be a timing issue, and I would just analyze it and meet with party staff and see what the best plan would be. But I'm open to all possibilities.
From your time working in municipal government in Comox as a councillor, are there any things you feel in the provincial system of government should be changed, aren't working the way they should be?
One of the big things I see as a municipal councillor is, there's this big push for housing, which is great, but there's also not the infrastructure funding needed for municipalities to deal with the increase in housing. I go to the gym with my son in the early mornings, and we go, and he's a teenager, and we go and lift some weights. And our community center is just bursting at the seams. You gotta wait for a machine all the time. And so if we add 5,000 more people to Comox, we're only at 15 now. If we go to 20, we're going to need a bigger recreation center. We're going to need a bigger fire hall. We're going to need more sports fields. We're going to need more roads. We're going to need, more infrastructure. And so the province is saying, housing, 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 and we need that, of course. But what about the infrastructure? What about the size of our fire hall? What about our infrastructure such as roads? So we're really going to need to see more funding and, from the province, from the feds, because really municipalities only have a limited ability to tax. And so we're going to need to see an influx in infrastructure spending to the municipalities to support the growth in our populations.
Is there anything else you'd like to highlight for people about why you're running in this race?
I think really this is a really critical time for our province. And, we're seeing the next provincial election. It's going to be really critical for the environment, for the economy, jobs, healthcare, housing. And right at this time, our party needs a leader with experience in all of these areas. And really, elected experience. We have three great candidates, Miss Lowen, Adam Bremner-Aikens, really good people. And, I've been really enjoying meeting them, in different places around the province. But only one of the three of us has been elected to government. Only one of the three of us has run as a Green and won as a Green. And only one of us has recruited other candidates and helped them get elected and then worked as a team to deliver results for constituents. So, Joe, we need a leader who can hit the ground running, who on day one can start recruiting candidates, bring a real plan to voters, and start building momentum for the next election. And I'm ready to do that. I'm ready to build a BC Green Party that can do this. And I'm really looking forward to having that opportunity.
Jonathan Kerr, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Joe, thank you. Have a great day.
Jonathan Kerr is running to be leader of the BC Green Party. Adam Bremner-Aikens is a student at Simon Fraser University who has served as secretary for the BC Green Party. In the 2024 provincial election, he ran as the party's candidate in Port Coquitlam. In 2020, he was the party's candidate in the Coquitlam-Burke Mountain riding. He's the third and final candidate to enter the BC Green Party's leadership race. Adam Bremner-Aikens, can you tell me what's your pitch for why people should choose you to be the next leader of the BC Green Party?
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Joe. My pitch is that I've been around the party. I was party secretary, councillor at large, been on the board, provincial council of the party for the last 4 years. I've done a lot of on-the-ground organizing where I live over in the mainland. And I'm a two-time candidate. I think that the gist is that I've got the backing to do this. I've got the experience. I've sort of played a bunch of different roles in the party. And now more than ever, I sort of looked at myself in the mirror one day and I said, well, no one's put their name forward yet. And I got to be able to, if the world all goes to hell, I got to be able to know that I've fought as hard as I could. And I want to keep fighting as hard as I can because I think the world, there's a lot of room for improvement right now, it feels like, in our province. And as someone who's affected by the affordability crisis and someone who worries about their future, whether it's climate change or housing or even just being able to stay in the province and continue to live here for my life and in my community, I had to stand up. I had to put my name forward and I had to fight for what I want. And that's a better province.
What would be your goals or your priorities for the party if you were elected leader?
Yeah, a big one for me is expanding our on the ground organizing capacity. It's going into communities, and as leader, I want to go into. I've announced a 93 riding tour, and whether it's me sitting in coffee shops or talking to volunteers, I want to make sure that every riding in the province knows the Green Leader has been there, and people know that we show up for your community, whether it is far up in the north in Fort St. John, or you're down in Victoria, or you're out in Kamloops, Kelowna, Nelson, wherever you are, Prince Rupert, doesn't matter. Greens are there for you, and I want to work a lot on organizing and making sure that our party can grow and expand its seat count in the next election.
As far as policy objectives, what kinds of issues do you think a Green Party led by you would focus on the most? What would you hope to achieve?
Yeah, and this is a really good one. So I differentiate myself from the other two candidates because I've spent so much time within the party. I have a strong understanding that the leader doesn't make direct policy within the BC Greens. We have a formal process where anyone who is a member can apply to make policy, and it's vetted and reviewed. There is scientific data that you have to submit with the policy, and it's reviewed by committee. So in terms of specific policy issues, that's something that I've chosen to stick out of. But I think in terms of priorities for the party, I think, cost of living and climate change are the two big ones that I would see addressed. Cost of, and well-being of people in British Columbia, and that's access to healthcare and implementing our 4-day work week so people can enjoy their lives more, and ensuring that you have access to family doctors and medicine, and looking at integrating vision and mental health and dental care into our socialized systems so that people in BC don't have to, fork over $200 for a pair of glasses, and they don't have to prevent themselves from getting mental health treatment when they need it, because sometimes it's just not easy. Sometimes you need everyone needs a bit of mental health support, right? I think that should just be part of our healthcare system. So I want to focus on the well-being and driving the cost of living down by using local BC products, ensuring that we're taking advantage of our farmers here. And look at, we give out lots of subsidies to the dairy industry. Why not subsidize some of our agricultural farmers who are putting out fruit and vegetables for us that we find and that we love? Everyone loves Okanagan cherries or peaches. And I think that those farmers deserve the same level of support as dairy farmers. And so looking at how to drop the cost of living in BC while ensuring that our quality of life continues to go up is going to be a central focus, as well as, of course, addressing the issue of our time, climate change, something that the current government just doesn't seem to grasp as a significant issue.
In the most recent provincial election and in the most recent federal election, there was a trend towards two parties getting the majority of the votes in most places. In that kind of environment, how would you convince a potential voter that the Green Party is a viable option? It's a party that could win a seat in their riding.
Yeah, I think when we look at the data on that, most voters will choose the BC Greens as their second choice. And in a system where it feels like we only have two choices, people get a little nervous and they go on about the vote splitting. And it's something that the two larger parties push as a narrative. But to that, I say it's not true. BC Greens pop up in communities across the province, whether it's Nelson or Victoria or Sea to Sky, Prince George, Kamloops, Vancouver. We're everywhere. And it will take, in the climate we have, is it sort of feels like we're trying to replicate the US model. And the Greens are here to say, absolutely not. We're not going to go and name call everyone and our opponents. We're not going to go out and disrespect other parties. We're going to stay here. We're going to focus on our policies. We're going to focus on bringing a vision that is hopeful and positive. And people will see that because people see what's going on down in the US and they don't want that to happen here. And while it feels that we're moving that direction, I think the name calling is going to get pretty tiring pretty quick for most people. It's not very Canadian of us politicians.
Your bio on the Green Party's website mentions that you're heading into your last year at Simon Fraser University. How do you think your youth plays into this race?
I think it's an asset. I think on day one, I'm ready to go and I can get out there and I can pound pavement for as long as I need to. I think that people understand the urgency of which young people are approaching the issues in the world and the fear we have. And I don't want to turn that fear into fear mongering. I want to turn that fear into organizing capacity. I want us to find relief in achieving our goals. I want people to be motivated by the desire to make our province better. And I think as someone who has their entire life ahead of them, I would probably look at this from the most responsible lens. I don't get to walk away from this job at 65 or 70 and, have another 15 years. Whenever I'm done with this job, whether it be in 5-10 years, I still have to live in the province and I have to live with my actions. And as a young person, I want one thing, and that's for this province to be as good as it can be so that I can enjoy my life and I can thrive here. And that's my motivation. Whether that is self-interested or not, that is up for debate. But I want to have this province be as good as it can be, for myself, for my friends, my family, my community, and every community across the province. I don't think anyone wants to see BC go downhill.
If you were elected leader, what would you hope to see from your party's deal with the NDP in between now and the next provincial election?
Yeah, I would love to see, we have renegotiations coming up in September. So whoever the next leader is going to be will have to do that almost immediately. And I think we got a lot of strong concessions out of the NDP in our first deal. And now that both of our MLAs have experience and they have already done this, and with a leader who's going to be ready to negotiate and be strong on what they desire, I think we're going to get lots of things out of the NDP. We're going to look at trying to expand social services potentially. We could look at climate goals. We could look at continued reviews and improvements on our healthcare system, and improved funding for education and transit opportunities, looking at expanding provincial infrastructure, potentially looking at getting our rail systems back under provincial control. And we're seeing how we can help reform BC ferries to make them more effective in serving communities. All of these are possibilities. And that will come down to what the NDP is willing to work with us on. But as the next leader, I'm going to be pushing for as much as I can, because I believe people want some positive change in this province.
Are there any significant changes you would like to pursue in the Green Party's direction if you were leader?
Nothing too significant off of its trajectory now. I would like to see the party continue to grow, obviously, and expand its seat count. But I think the messaging is correct. We need a province and we need a party who's willing to put people as their first priority over profits and over anything else. People and their quality of lives matter, and being able to afford to live here matters, and being able to protect our forests and our mountains and not have to worry about the summer of smoke every year. I think those are the priorities people are focused on. And that's what the BC Green Party has been talking about. We have vast policy. We're known for just our environmental policies, but if people go and they inquire, we have very, very strong comprehensive policies on all elements of government. And we're ready to bring that in. It's well researched. It's backgrounded. It's from experts. It's not just someone in a dark room who decided this is our policy and that's what we're going to do. And I hope that I can share that with British Columbians across the province. And I've, as an MLA candidate, when I door knock, I've never had a negative reaction to our policy because it's common sense and it's rooted in evidence.
How are you approaching the task of getting new members signed up as we're getting close to the deadline for this leadership race?
Yeah, there's been a lot of recruitment locally, through networks, friends and families, and inspiring people my age to get involved in politics for the first time has been great. And there's been a lot of positive response to that, as well as there have been people who have been sort of interested in the Greens and didn't really want to get involved. And I'd say this is the time. If you've ever sort of looked at us and said, oh, maybe I could vote for them, get involved in the leadership race. Pick the candidate you want to vote for at the provincial level, so that when they go and recruit candidates and when they go, you can have influence in that process and you can put forward and say, hey, here's a candidate from our area who's amazing. Could you run them for us? And I would say that all starts now. Whoever becomes the next leader, whoever gets voted in, who has the most success, they will determine all of the other stuff that will make you want to vote for the Greens. And this is that opportunity to have some influence in provincial politics, which we as normal people don't really get that opportunity.
If you are leading the party, how are you going to approach the task of leading it without a seat in Victoria?
Yeah, I think I am excited about that opportunity because it means for me as leader going into it, I get to spend the first part of my tenure organizing and going into communities and building up our strength and answering people's questions on the ground and going to places that, people don't, although we haven't always seen a political party leader there. Going into communities and building up our strength and eventually that time will come to get a seat. But at the moment, it is an element of advantage because there's a lot of work to be done as an MLA, and there's a lot of responsibility to the community you represent. And it would be hard to juggle it all at the start of becoming leader of the party as well. So I think that is an element that we can utilize as the next leader. I can utilize as the next leader to build out the party's strength so that when we go into the next election, we have 5 to 10 seats where we can say, these are our shots.
Do you think you'd be open to the idea of running in a by-election before the next provincial election?
Yes, I would be open to running into a by-election. I'd be open to running a general election, whatever would make most sense for the party and myself.
Is there anything else you'd like to highlight about why you're running in this race?
Yeah, I think the important part for me is I'm running in the race because I think we need someone who comes from a background within the party. I'm the only person in this race who has been in leadership positions within the party itself. I have spent years organizing. I have spent years on its board and provincial council. I have done the work as an MLA candidate. I understand the different elements of the party. I'm going to be ready on day one to walk in and assume the job. There isn't going to be as large of a learning curve for me. And I think that's going to be important, especially if we risk something like the NDP calling a snap election like they did the last time the BC Greens had a leadership race. So to that, I'd say I'm ready on day one. I can walk in and there will be a lot to learn, but I have the foundations down. And that I think is critical, especially in a time of limited political stability in BC's government.
Adam Bremner-Aikens, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for having me, Joe. It was wonderful.
Adam Bremner-Aikens is running to be leader of the BC Green Party. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer and RB Fruit is our technical advisor. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and generous listeners like you. This program gives thanks to the Snuneymuxw First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.